بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أفضل المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. We begin today the first lesson of Tajweed inshallah, and the first lesson will be with Istazah and Basmalah. What this meaning? Istazah mean أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protection, refuge, shelter from the shaitan, the accursed one. I tell for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I am very weak, I cannot protect myself from shaitan. Please, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, help me, shelter me, refuge me, protection me from a shaitan. This is meaning of al-Ista'adha. And al-Basmalah, it's mean Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most gracious, the most merciful. But al-Ista'adha, I have the way to read al-Ista'adha. Sometimes I read it loudly, and sometimes I read it quiet. What time I read the Ista'adha quiet? In my secrets. When I read alone, when I recite the Quran alone, I read in my secret. Or in the beginning of the salah. When I begin my salah, I read the Ista'adha also in my secrets. Or if I am a circle of the Quran, group of the Quran, we read together, and I am not the first one to read. I am second one, third one. I don't read Ista'adha, I read it in my secrets. So what time I read it loudly? If I am in a circle of the Quran Kareem, in the group of the Quran Kareem, we read together, and I am the first one to read. If I am first one to read, I must say al-Ista'adha loudly. Or I read reading in events, for example, I must read al-Ista'adha loudly. This is the way to read al-Ista'adha loudly or in secrets. But we have a different way to read al-Ista'adha or Basmalah together. To recite it, it's depend about I begin the surah, or I begin the Quran, or I connection with surah. This is everyone have a way. When I speak about when I begin to read the Quran, what I do? I read al-Ista'adha, and I read Bismillah, and I read the beginning of the surah. But how I read it? Number one, joining all three. What is the three? Ista'adha and Basmalah and the beginning of the surah. How I read it? Let's take an example for this. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله. In this way. I connection all the three together. Opposite of this, I cut all the three. How I make it? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. In this way. I still have two way also. I connection number one with number two, and I cut number three. What is the number one and number two? Number one is al-Ista'adha, number two is al-Basmalah, number three is the beginning of the surah. If I connection al-Ista'adha with al-Basmalah, and I separate it with them, the beginning of the surah. How I read it? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. What I do also, I have a last one. Connection number two with number three. What is number two with number three? I connection al-Basmalah with the beginning of the surah. And I separated number one. How I read it? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. And I cut. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. This is the way to when I begin the surah. I have 114 ayah in the Quran Kareem. I begin with al-Basmalah except one surah. I have 114 surah in the Quran Kareem. I begin with Basmalah except one surah, Surah Bara'ah, Surah At-Tawbah. I just begin with al-Ista'adha. So how I read it? I connection with al-Ista'adha or I cut it. How I connection? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم براءة. Or I cut it. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم براءة. This is the way when we begin to read from beginning of the Quran Kareem. We have another way when we read from the middle of the surah, or when we connection surah with surah. Inshallah, next time we'll explain it. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك استغفرك ربي وأتوب إليك أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.